Your methods are outdated, Doug. This isn't personal. It's just business. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut on Tuesday morning, March 18th, 2025. I was standing in what used to be Chuck Hamilton's corner office, watching his 32-year-old son Bradley fire me after 15 years of building Hamilton and Associates from a small Denver consulting firm into a regional energy powerhouse. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. My name is Douglas Cameron, and I'm 47 years old. For over 15 years, I'd been the backbone of Hamilton and Associates' energy consulting division here in Denver. While other executives spent their weekends at Cherry Hills Country Club or glued to their TVs watching football, I was in the field, from oil rigs in Wyoming to renewable energy sites across Colorado, building relationships that actually mattered. My 10 years in the Army Reserve taught me more than any business school could. Weekend drills at Fort Carson, annual training exercises, learning to lead under pressure, that stuff sticks with you. When some hotshot consultant starts talking about strategic planning, I think about planning logistics for a 200-man unit in the middle of nowhere. Real planning, where mistakes cost more than money. The Reserve taught me discipline, attention to detail, and how to function when everything's falling apart around you. I structured our entire energy consulting department from scratch, closed over 200 contracts worth millions, and personally trained half the team that kept this place running. Chuck Hamilton, the founder, always respected that work. We'd sit in his corner office overlooking the Front Range, discussing strategy over black coffee and day-old donuts from the break room. He trusted me with the big accounts, the difficult negotiations, the clients who demanded expertise you can't learn in some MBA program. When clients needed someone who understood both regulatory frameworks and field operations, Chuck called me. When the EPA changed compliance requirements overnight, I was the guy who made sure our clients stayed ahead of the curve. When international energy partnerships needed someone who could navigate cultural differences and technical complexities, my name was first on the list. I earned every dollar of my $98,000 annual salary, plus bonuses that bumped my income up 40 to 50% when I landed those major deals. More importantly, I'd built something that mattered. My work helped power Colorado's energy infrastructure, supported hundreds of jobs, and contributed to projects that would outlast all of us. The Meridian Energy deal wasn't just about money. We were talking about a natural gas distribution network across 3 countries, infrastructure that would power communities for the next 50 years. Bradley saw dollar signs. I saw the engineering challenge, the regulatory maze, the cultural nuances that could make or break the whole thing. That's the difference between inherited authority and earned expertise. But everything changed when Chuck decided to step back and hand the CEO position to his son Bradley. Brad Hamilton was 32 years old, fresh from his University of Colorado Boulder MBA, with exactly 14 months of experience at a competitor firm. While I was navigating EPA compliance frameworks and international energy contracts, Bradley was still figuring out the difference between upstream and downstream operations. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I drove my Suburban to work. Same route I'd been taking for 15 years. Linda always said I should get something newer, more fuel efficient. But that truck had 200,000 miles of reliability. Like me, it earned its place through performance, not appearance. I walked into the office at 7:15, same as always. My parking spot was the same one Chuck offered me after my 5th year with the company. The receptionist, Carol, gave me a strange look when I passed her desk. Something felt off. The usual morning chatter was replaced by hushed whispers and nervous glances. By 8 o'clock, I knew why. "Doug, I need to see you in my office," Bradley announced from his doorway. He was wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payment. His blonde hair was slicked back with enough product to waterproof a boat. He had that tone rich kids get when they think they own the world. I followed him into what used to be Chuck's office. Bradley had already redecorated, replacing Chuck's modest furniture with sleek glass and chrome pieces that screamed expensive but had no soul. He didn't offer me a seat. "I'll get straight to the point," Bradley said, leaning against his massive desk like he was putting on some kind of show. "Your performance hasn't met my expectations. I'm letting you go, effective immediately." I stood there processing what I'd just heard. 15 years of loyalty. Hundreds of successful negotiations. Countless nights spent working late to secure deals that made this company profitable. And this kid was firing me on what was essentially his first week as CEO. "What exactly are you basing this decision on?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Bradley shrugged, a gesture so casual it was insulting as hell. Lack of innovation. The company needs fresh energy, new perspectives. Your methods are outdated, Doug. This isn't personal. It's just business. Fresh energy, new perspectives. Outdated methods. The words of someone who had never spent a single night wondering if a deal would fall through. Never had to explain to a client why their project was delayed. Never felt the weight of other people's livelihoods resting on their shoulders. I walked out of that office with my head high, but my mind was already working. Security escorted me to my desk to collect my personal items. A coffee mug my son Mike gave me for Father's Day, a small American flag from my reserve unit, and a framed photo of Linda and the kids at Rocky Mountain National Park. The whole thing was crazy, like it was happening to somebody else. That evening, I sat at our kitchen table in Highlands Ranch, looking at Sarah's Colorado state tuition bill and Mike's football equipment invoice. Sarah was starting her senior year. Mike had just made varsity. Our mortgage, the kids' futures, Linda's small accounting practice, everything was connected to the job I'd just lost. "We'll figure it out," Linda said, placing her hand on my shoulder, but I could hear the worry in her voice. She'd built her business around the stability of my corporate income. Her seasonal clients helped, but we'd always counted on my steady paycheck to cover the big expenses. That night at dinner, Sarah looked up from her homework. "Dad, you okay? You seem different." Mike stopped working on his second helping of Linda's lasagna. These kids had never seen their old man get fired. Hell, they'd never seen me not have answers. Sarah's senior year, Mike's football scholarship hopes, Linda's business just starting to take off. Everything we'd built over 20 years was sitting on that kitchen table along with the bills I wasn't sure how we'd pay. "Just some changes at work, sweetheart," I told Sarah. "Nothing for you to worry about." But I was worried. This wasn't just about my pride anymore. It was about providing for the family that depended on me. Mike needed new cleats. Sarah's college applications were due, and Linda's accounting practice couldn't cover everything on its own. Here's the thing about experience in the energy business, though. It teaches you to look beyond the immediate chaos and focus on the details that matter. While Bradley was probably celebrating his power move with an expensive lunch at some downtown steakhouse, I was thinking about the Meridian Energy International contract. That deal had been my project for 8 months. A complex international agreement worth $12 million that would revolutionize how Hamilton and Associates operated in overseas markets. We'd been expanding aggressively into international energy consulting, and this contract was the cornerstone of that expansion. More importantly, I'd insisted on specific language in the agreement to protect against exactly this kind of corporate instability. My military training had taught me to always have contingency plans. In the reserve, we called it covering your six. In business, I called it professional insurance. Months ago, when I first sensed Bradley might cause problems, I'd made sure certain protections were built into our major contracts. 3 days after my termination, on Friday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Chuck Hamilton himself. "Doug, I need you to come in immediately." His voice was tense, almost panicked. "There's been a development with the Meridian Energy deal." "I'm sorry, Mr. Hamilton, but I no longer work for your company," I replied calmly. "Your son made that very clear." "Please, just hear me out. Can you meet me at the Starbucks on 17th Street in an hour?" Curiosity got the better of me. I found Chuck sitting in a corner booth looking like he'd aged 5 years in 3 days. His usually perfect silver hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. The man who'd built this company from nothing looked ready to explode. "Bradley made a mistake," he said without any small talk. "A big one. The legal team discovered something in the Meridian Energy contract that we all missed." "What kind of something?" Chuck pulled out a manila folder and slid it across the table. "Clause 23C. It specifically names you as the sole authorized negotiator for Hamilton and Associates. Without your signature, the deal is void." I opened the folder and scanned the document. There it was, in black and white legal text that I'd insisted on months ago. The clause was ironclad. No Douglas Cameron, no $12 million contract. My military background had taught me to plan for contingencies, and corporate instability was definitely a contingency worth planning for. "The Meridian executives are flying in from Dubai next week," Chuck continued. "They're expecting to finalize everything. If we can't close this deal, Bradley's first month as CEO will cost us more than most companies make in a year." I closed the folder and looked Chuck in the eye. "What exactly are you asking me?" "Come back. I'll override Bradley's decision. We need you." For 15 years, I'd been the reliable one. The guy who said yes to impossible deadlines and difficult clients. But this time, things were going to be different. Bradley had shown me exactly what my loyalty was worth to him. I'll consider returning Mr. Hamilton, but only under specific conditions. His eyebrows raised slightly. Name them. First, I want complete autonomy on the Meridian deal. No interference from Bradley. No second-guessing my strategy. No micromanagement. Chuck nodded. Second, I want it in writing that my position is secure regardless of who runs day-to-day operations. Done. Third, I want a 20% salary increase and the title of Senior Director, Energy Consulting Division. Chuck didn't hesitate. Agreed. The following Monday morning, March 24th, I walked back into Hamilton and Associates with a new contract in my briefcase and a completely different attitude. Bradley was waiting in the lobby, his face red with barely contained fury. "This is temporary," he hissed as I walked past him toward the elevator. "Don't get comfortable." "Good morning to you too, Brad," I replied without breaking stride. The Meridian meeting was scheduled for Wednesday, March 26th. I spent the next 2 days reviewing every detail of the contract, researching the cultural expectations of our Dubai-based clients, and preparing for what I knew would be the most important negotiation of my career. I even brushed up on my Arabic, a language I'd studied during my reserve training but rarely used in professional settings. Understanding cultural nuances isn't something you learn in business school. It comes from experience, from actually working with people from different backgrounds, from respecting their perspectives and building genuine relationships. Bradley would never understand that. Wednesday arrived with typical Colorado weather, bright sunshine and a crisp spring breeze. The Meridian Energy executives were impressive men in their 50s, wearing immaculate suits and carrying themselves with the quiet confidence that comes from controlling vast amounts of money. Their lead negotiator, Omar Al-Rashid, had flown in specifically for this meeting. Bradley tried to insert himself into the introductions, but I smoothly took control of the room. "Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Al-Rashid," I said, extending my hand. "Welcome to Denver." The surprise and pleasure on Al-Rashid's face was immediate. "Wa alaikum wassalam." "Your Arabic is excellent, Mr. Cameron. Shukran. I studied it during my military service and maintained it for business purposes. I believe understanding culture is as important as understanding contracts." For the next 4 hours, I conducted the negotiation with precision that surprised even myself. I addressed their concerns about intellectual property protection, negotiated favorable payment terms, and demonstrated deep understanding of their market needs. When they raised questions about Denver's logistics infrastructure, I provided detailed information about our proximity to shipping routes and international airports. Bradley sat in the corner, understanding maybe 30% of what was being discussed, watching $12 million slip through his fingers and back into mine. Every time he tried to interject, Al-Rashid politely redirected questions back to me. It was clear who they trusted to handle their business. The technical aspects of the deal were complex. We were talking about natural gas distribution networks, environmental compliance across multiple jurisdictions, and regulatory frameworks that varied from country to country. This wasn't theoretical business school knowledge. This was hands-on expertise built over years of actual field experience. "Mr. Cameron," Al-Rashid said during a break, "you understand not just the technical requirements, but the cultural sensitivity required for international partnerships. This is rare in American consulting firms." By 5:30 that afternoon, the Meridian Energy deal was signed, sealed, and worth every penny of its $12 million value. Al-Rashid shook my hand with genuine warmth. "You understand our culture, Mr. Cameron," he said. "That is something that cannot be taught in universities." Bradley's face during the handshakes looked like he'd swallowed something toxic. His grand plan to prove himself by cleaning house had backfired spectacularly. The son who was supposed to modernize the company had nearly destroyed its biggest deal in a single week. Chuck clapped me on the shoulder as the Meridian team headed to their rental cars. "Exceptional work, Doug. Truly exceptional." But I knew Bradley wouldn't let this humiliation slide. Rich kids don't handle being shown up well, especially by someone they've already tried to discard. I was proven right within 48 hours. It started small. Emails to clients that I supposedly sent but never actually wrote. Messages that contained subtle errors or unprofessional language that made me look incompetent. At first I thought it was a computer glitch, but then I noticed a pattern. Jennifer Collins from Apex Solutions called me directly on Friday morning. "Doug, I got your email about rescheduling our presentation, but the tone seemed off. Are you feeling all right?" I hadn't sent any email to Jennifer Collins. I checked my sent folder. Nothing. But when I asked her to forward me the message, there it was, sent from my company address at 11:47 p.m. the previous night. The writing style was all wrong. full of casual contractions and informal language that I never used in professional correspondence. Similar incidents piled up throughout the following week. A report I'd supposedly submitted contained calculation errors that a high school student would catch. Project timelines that I'd allegedly revised showed unrealistic deadlines that made no business sense. Phone messages from clients complaining about my sudden attitude changes during conversations I'd never had. Someone was systematically sabotaging my reputation, and they had access to internal company systems to do it. My Army Reserve training kicked in. Digital forensics, metadata analysis, synchronized timestamps. I approached this like a tactical operation: document everything, verify twice, strike once. I started keeping detailed records, screenshots of emails I didn't send, voice recordings of confused client calls, timestamps of when I was actually in meetings versus when these mysterious communications were happening. Always document everything. That was basic military protocol that served me well in civilian life. The breakthrough came on Friday evening, April 4th. I was working late, finishing up a proposal for a potential new client, when I heard typing from Bradley's office. The building was supposed to be empty except for security. I walked quietly toward the executive wing and saw light spilling from under his door. Through the slightly open door, I could see Bradley hunched over his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. On his screen was my email interface, and he was composing a message to one of our biggest clients. "Frankly, I'm not sure this project aligns with our current strategic objectives," he was typing. "Perhaps we should consider alternative partnerships that better serve our mutual interests going forward." Translation: he was trying to make me sound dismissive and unprofessional to a client worth $3 million annually. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Bradley was so focused on his sabotage mission that he didn't notice me standing in his doorway. For 10 minutes, I watched him send emails, modify reports, and even leave voicemails using some kind of voice-changing app to impersonate me. But Bradley wasn't working alone. Rachel Brennan, his 33-year-old former sorority sister from CU Boulder, who he'd hired as strategic communications director, walked into the office carrying Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. "How's Operation Make Doug Look Incompetent going?" she asked, laughing as she set down the food. "Better than expected," Bradley replied. "By next week, clients will be demanding his removal. Dad won't have any choice but to fire him permanently. What about the Meridian contract? Won't that complicate things? Once Doug's reputation is destroyed, I'll renegotiate the terms. Make myself the primary contact. Dad will see that I can handle big deals just as well as his precious golden boy." Rachel opened the wine and poured 2 glasses. "To phase 1 of the Bradley Hamilton era," she toasted. "I had everything I needed." But instead of confronting them immediately, I decided to let them continue their little conspiracy for a few more days. Sometimes the best strategy is giving people enough rope to hang themselves. My military training had taught me patience. Let the enemy commit fully before you strike. Monday morning, April 7th, brought a flood of client complaints, exactly as Bradley had planned. What he didn't know was that I'd spent the weekend preparing my own operation. I documented every piece of sabotage, traced every fake email back to its source, and compiled a comprehensive report that would make a military intelligence officer proud. Chuck called an emergency meeting with senior staff for Tuesday afternoon, April 8th. Bradley strutted into the conference room like a peacock, clearly expecting to present his case for my immediate dismissal. "Gentlemen," Chuck began, "we have a serious problem. Several clients have complained about erratic behavior from one of our senior consultants. Bradley, you requested this meeting to address the issue." Bradley stood up, straightening his tie like he was putting on some kind of show. "Unfortunately, Doug Cameron's recent performance has been concerning. We've received multiple complaints about unprofessional communications, missed deadlines, and generally inappropriate conduct." He opened his laptop and started displaying screenshots of the very emails I'd watched him create. "As you can see, these messages are completely unacceptable for someone in Doug's position. I believe we need to take decisive action before this damages our reputation further." The room was silent. Chuck looked genuinely troubled. The other executives shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Then I opened my briefcase. "Before we make any decisions," I said calmly, "I think everyone should see the complete picture." I connected my laptop to the conference room projector. The first slide showed a timeline of every suspicious email, phone call, and report that had allegedly come from me over the past 2 weeks. "Bradley is correct that there have been communication issues," I continued, "but the source isn't what he's suggesting." Bradley's confident expression began to waver. "Doug, what exactly are you implying?" Instead of answering, I played the video I'd recorded Friday night. The room filled with Bradley's voice. How's Operation Make Doug Look Incompetent going? Followed by Rachel's laughter and their entire conversation about sabotaging my reputation. The silence that followed was deafening. Nobody said a word. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick conference room carpet. Chuck's face had gone from concerned to furious in about 30 seconds. Bradley, is that your voice on this recording? Bradley's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Dad, I can explain. Doug has been undermining my authority since day one. You were just trying to frame a loyal employee, Chuck interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. You used company resources to impersonate a colleague, damage client relationships, and destroy someone's reputation. I advanced to the next slide, showing the digital forensics report I'd compiled. Every fake email can be traced back to Bradley's computer using timestamp analysis. IT security logs show his access to my email account outside normal business hours. The voice messages were created using a commercially available app that leaves digital fingerprints. Rachel, who had been sitting in the corner trying to become invisible, suddenly stood up. This is all circumstantial. You can't prove, actually I can. I played another recording of her voice clearly stating her involvement in the conspiracy. While workplace recordings require careful legal consideration, the evidence of system abuse and fraudulent communications is overwhelming. Patricia Murphy, head of our legal department, cleared her throat. Chuck, this constitutes fraud, harassment, and potentially criminal impersonation. We need to involve law enforcement and conduct a thorough internal investigation. Bradley finally found his voice again. You can't do this to me. I'm the CEO of this company. Dad, you can't let them destroy everything I've worked for. Chuck stood up slowly, looking ready to explode. Bradley, you destroyed it yourself. In 1 month as CEO, you fired our most valuable negotiator, nearly lost our biggest contract, and then launched a criminal conspiracy to cover your mistakes. The board meeting that followed was swift and decisive. Bradley was suspended immediately pending a full investigation. Rachel was terminated for cause and escorted from the building by security. The evidence was so overwhelming that Bradley's lawyers advised him to resign rather than face potential criminal charges. But the story doesn't end with Bradley's downfall. 3 days after his resignation, Chuck offered me a new position, Senior Director of Energy Consulting Operations, with a salary increase to $125,000 annually, plus performance bonuses, and a corner office with a view of the mountains. More importantly, I was given the authority to rebuild the energy consulting department from the ground up. I immediately reached out to every client who had received those fake communications, personally explaining what had happened and reassuring them of our commitment to professional service. I also implemented new security protocols for company email systems and created clear policies about nepotism and abuse of authority. The changes weren't just about preventing future Bradley Hamiltons. They were about building a company culture based on competence and integrity rather than inherited privilege and corporate politics. 6 months later, by September 2025, Hamilton and Associates had its most profitable quarter in company history. The Meridian Energy contract led to 3 additional international deals worth over $18 million combined. We hired 15 new employees, including several energy professionals who had been unfairly passed over during Bradley's brief reign. I was sitting in that corner office, looking out at the front range when Chuck walked in with coffee. Doug, he said, I should have made this decision 15 years ago. We talked about the future, about building something that would last, about the difference between running a company and leading one. Bradley never understood that distinction. Chuck Hamilton, now in his 70s, still comes in twice a week. We still share coffee and talk strategy, though now the donuts are from a better bakery. He often tells people that the best business decision he ever made was bringing me back and giving me the authority to do what I do best. Bradley, meanwhile, struggled to find employment in Denver's tight-knit energy consulting community. Word spreads quickly in our industry, and his reputation for unethical behavior made him essentially unemployable in his chosen field. Last I heard, he was working at a car dealership in Phoenix, probably telling Prius buyers about his executive leadership experience while I was helping shape Colorado's energy future. The most satisfying moment came 8 months after Bradley's resignation, when Omar Al-Rashid flew back to Denver specifically to discuss expanding our partnership. As we shook hands in my new corner office, he smiled and said, Mr. Cameron, we chose the right company to work with. Your integrity speaks louder than any contract. Linda's accounting practice has grown significantly, partly because of the networking opportunities that come with my new position. Sarah graduated summa cum laude from Colorado State and landed a great job with an environmental consulting firm. Mike received a full scholarship to play football at Colorado State, where he's studying engineering. At Sarah's college graduation that spring, she introduced me to her friends as the dad who proved that good guys can finish first. Mike, now starting his sophomore year and being recruited by several professional scouts, told his teammates that his old man was pretty tough when he needs to be. Sometimes I drive past that car dealership in Phoenix when I'm down there on business. I've never stopped in, but I think about the choices that led Bradley there. He had every advantage: education, connections, inherited authority. What he didn't have was the one thing you can't buy or inherit: the respect that comes from earning your place through competence and character. I never set out to destroy Bradley Hamilton. I simply refused to let him destroy me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's competence, patience, and letting people's own actions determine their fate. Experience taught me that bullies often defeat themselves if you give them enough time and rope. Bradley's arrogance and insecurity led him to make increasingly desperate decisions that ultimately exposed his true character to everyone who mattered. Today, Hamilton and Associates is stronger than ever, built on a foundation of mutual respect and professional excellence rather than inherited privilege and corporate politics. And me? I'm exactly where I always belonged, doing work I love with people who value what I bring to the table. My military training taught me that leadership isn't about the rank on your collar or the title on your door. It's about earning trust through competence, treating people with respect, and always being ready to do the hard work yourself. Those lessons served me well in business, and they'll serve me well whatever comes next. That's a lesson worth remembering, whether you're 25 or 55. In the end, experience and integrity will always triumph over arrogance and entitlement. The only question is how long it takes for that truth to reveal itself.